Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Maximizing Microsoft Teams Summit. Today's event was organized by the hardworking folks at Redmond Magazine, who have left no stone unturned in their efforts to bring together some of the best independent experts on today's topic. Many thanks to our sponsor, premium video conferencing services provider BlueJeans, for making this event possible. And thanks to you for joining us. I'm John K. Waters, Editor-in-Chief of Application Development Trends, and I'll be your moderator for the first of three information-packed sessions. They'll be informative, too, if they're information-packed. But before we get underway, I need to go over a few housekeeping details. Each of today's sessions is being recorded for later access. Keep an eye out for an email with a link to that recording that'll be coming your way within the next few days. Each of today's sessions will be followed by a 5 to 10 minute Q&A. You can type your questions into the Q&A box at any time. Please feel free to add your questions as they occur to you throughout the summit. We'll do our best to get to all of them. Our sponsor, BlueJeans, without whose sponsorship this event would not be possible, has provided some extra resources that can be found on the right-hand side of your screen. Please take a moment to check those out. As you leave the summit today, you'll be asked to take a very short survey. Please take a moment to share your honest opinions. Our editors read every comment, and they help to shape our future events. And last but not least, at the end of the third session, one lucky attendee will be receiving a GoPro Hero 9 5K 20-megapixel streaming action camera. But you must be present to win, so stick with us. Now let's get started with our first session, Expert Insights for Maximizing Your Microsoft Teams Installations. For this session, we called on Ben Stejink, owner, chief cloud consultant, and architect at IntelliJink. Ben is a Microsoft certified trainer and Microsoft 365 expert with more than a decade of experience with Office 365, SharePoint, and Azure. Ben co-hosts the MS Cloud IT Pro podcast, where he discusses the latest technologies in the Microsoft 365 and Azure space from an IT point of view. He also hosts the very informative IntelliJink YouTube channel and publishes the weekly MS Cloud Report newsletter. He's all over YouTube. You should definitely check out his videos. You guys are in for a great session. Please take it away, Ben.
All right. Thank you, John. Thanks for that introduction. You made me sound way better than I make me sound myself. So, yes, I appreciate the introduction. Looking forward to it. So let's just go ahead and dive in. I don't even have to do any introduction. This is kind of nice, John. So we're going to take a look at, like John said, 5 things you can do to help maximize your team installation. So what types of things can you do kind of above and beyond what people may think of doing out of the box with Teams, or they get into Teams and they just don't quite realize all of the capabilities that Microsoft has packed into Teams. Again, as we go, ask questions, throw them in the chat box. I'm going to leave time at the end. I will also try to keep an eye on questions too if something may come up that's relevant to one of these topics. But what are these 5 things? So first of all, Teams is more than just chat and meetings. And I have slides we're going to get into these. This is just kind of an overview. So that's the first thing we're going to look at. Second is Teams is part of a larger suite. Some people get into Teams, they don't realize what all is included within that suite. And the next, Teams integrates with third-party products. This is kind of a fun one to look at, is some of those different integrations you can have. After that, we're going to dive into Teams in training. So that one, again, just kind of a fun one, something that not a lot of people think about. And then we're going to wrap it up with Teams can sprawl. The 5th one is kind of the biggest one, the one that I like talking about the most, and something very important to keep in mind. So make sure you stick around for the last one too, because that one is a really big one in my mind. So first of all, Teams is more than just chat and meetings. A lot of people get into Teams because it was a replacement for Skype for Business. They were using Skype for Business in the past. Maybe it was on premises. Maybe it was in Office 365. And Microsoft has recently gotten rid of Skype for Business. Teams is it. But maybe you got into Teams because you needed a chat replacement. You needed a replacement for meetings with coworkers. And you haven't looked at what all of the possibilities are when it comes to some of those Teams and meetings. So first of all, it's a collaboration suite. And I'm going to dive into that one and apps a little bit more, but there's a lot of different products that are included. When you look at the whole Office 365 suite, when you look at SharePoint and Stream and Planner and some of those other tools, you can do more than just chat. You can pin documents, and within Teams, you can chat about documents. There's a lot of functionality there as you collaborate and work with your coworkers to really leverage Teams. And you'll see as we go through here, sometimes I'll even refer to Teams as Microsoft's browser for the Office 365 suite or the Microsoft 365 suite. You can do all kinds of things in Teams, working with those different products that are a part of the suite. Next, there's a new one out there, webinars. This is, trying to think, this is maybe a month or two ago that people started seeing this. You can actually schedule webinars within Teams. Maybe it's public-facing webinars that you want people to sign up for, register for, a lot like the one you did today. Or if you just want to hold internal meetings within your company and have registration, have people sign up for training that we'll look at a little bit later today. You can host those types of webinars, or you can have your internal registration process, host a webinar, do it for training, for corporate-wide meetings, for any of those. All of that functionality now was built right into Teams to schedule those. Phones. This is one that John and I were actually chatting about before we jumped on. And not a lot of people realize this. And to be honest, I could probably do an entire session just on phones. To be fair, if you are particularly a small business, I know companies that are as big as 800 employees, even larger, that are using Teams for their phone system. Teams has automated attendance built in, where you can call a phone number and actually rings your Teams phone system, and you can dial by number, you can dial by name, you can search a company directory. You can do the whole press 0 for sales, press 1 for customer support, press 2 for John, press 3 for Ben. Set all of that up. You can have call queues where people can ring into a help desk, get placed in a queue, and you can grab users right from within that queue. Different automated rules, setting up when your business hours are and where those phone calls land based on if the company's open, if the company is closed. You can have a full-scale phone system right within Microsoft Teams. And again, depending on the size of your organization, it is very competitive with some of the other ones out there, some of the other third-party phone systems, and this bundles it right in with your productivity suite. There's even some third-party vendors out there that have physical phones that tie into the Teams phone system. Get a phone, plug it into your network, actually sign into Teams on your phone, and now you have a desktop phone that you can make calls with, you can receive calls with. It is just like a typical office phone, only you're doing all of that calling, all of that audio stuff right within Microsoft Teams. So that's another great one. And then finally, apps. Apps are another way to expand Teams beyond just chat and meetings. Start tying in other third parties, other services within Teams. So again, I really encourage all of you, explore Teams and all of that functionality. And I'll do a demo here in a little bit too, where we'll even look at some of this functionality and what it might look like within your environment. Tying in with the apps and the collaboration suite a little bit more. Don't forget about the rest of the suite. If you got into Teams, again, given the environment over the last couple years, everything that's been going on, a lot of people got into Teams because of remote work. They needed a way to communicate remotely. They needed a way to do meetings. They needed something similar to Zoom. Zoom has become a household name over the last 4 years. And some people use Zoom, some people use Teams just for that, but they don't realize the power of the rest of the suite. When it comes to working with files, storing files within SharePoint, you have lists. Microsoft lists have taken off again over the last 6 months or so, which is really just a SharePoint list. Viva was announced in the last 2 or 3 months. Tying that in, where you now have Viva connections in Teams that ties back into SharePoint. So one thing I struggle with a lot is people compare Teams to some of these other third parties. They compare it to, again, to Zoom. They compare it to maybe Cisco or some of these other products, thinking that it's just calls, Teams, chat, without realizing the rest of the power of that suite. Power Apps and Dataverse are another one. Dataverse is the old CDS. Being able to create low-code solutions, low-code apps that you can run right within Teams. This can turn into an app within Teams that users can work with to do whatever they want to track clients, to keep track of patients, their doctor's office, a dentist's office. Being able to create those apps quickly, easily, it doesn't require a lot of development experience. It's really more of that low-code, power user type platform. Tying those into Teams, Dataverse is that CDS database. Again, if you're doing it with Teams, if you're doing Power Apps and Dataverse with Teams, there's now a free tier of Dataverse that you can take advantage of to use as a backend database to build out some of these applications on Teams. Within Teams, you have tasks, which are really taking advantage of Planner, which is another app in that Microsoft 365 suite. It's taking your tasks from Microsoft To Do and bringing all of those tasks into Teams. So now by taking advantage of that task app, that task extension of the rest of the suite in Teams, you can keep track of all of your tasks in Teams. Microsoft recently added the Approvals app as well, another integration with Power Automate, being able to automate those business flows, work with those business flows, set up approvals. Maybe it's policies that need to go through an approval process for your company, or updates to an employee handbook, time off requests, vacation requests, any of those types of processes that you may have where people have to fill out certain information, they have to get approval on a document. You can now do all of those approvals right within the Approvals app within Microsoft Teams. Set up Power Automate, set up an approval, take care of those. And there's so many more ways you can integrate it. You have Microsoft Stream to host all your videos, put videos within Teams. Bookings for booking calendar appointments. Communities starts tying Yammer into Microsoft Teams. Power Virtual Agents, if you want to take advantage of the Power Platform and create some bots that work within Teams so users can actually chat with a bot within Teams. Open up a help desk ticket. Work with customer data. If you want to start going down that bot path, take a look at Power Virtual Agents within Teams and that integration as well. So again, if you got into this whole Microsoft 365 suite from the Teams side of things, go explore SharePoint, Power Apps, Power Automate, Planner, Streams, Booking, to really take advantage of that full suite that you have and integrate all that stuff into Teams. So lots of possibilities there, and sometimes people forget that all of those exist, that your Teams files are really just files sitting out in the SharePoint site. So take advantage of those. And then take advantage of third-party integrations in Microsoft Teams. There are over 1,000 different apps that are available to integrate into Microsoft Teams. So if you're in Teams, you're doing your chats, you're having your meetings in Teams, you're working with your files in Teams, why not bring in all of these additional applications? Give users that productivity boost by having everything all in one place. One thing that gets talked about a lot when it comes to productivity is task switching. I find this with myself. I'm working in Teams or I'm working in Outlook. I'm looking at something in the browser. I have to jump over to another app. I can get distracted. I go start looking at Reddit, or I go watch YouTube videos because I had to jump out of Teams to get to a browser, or I had to look at a Teams to go look at another browser window. Something else caught my eye, and I got pulled away from actually doing my work. Go look at what's out there for those other third-party integrations. Bring everybody's work into one spot so that if they're having a conversation and they have to look up something in one of those other third-party integrations, I was trying to think of a good one to put in there. You can do integrations with Google Docs, with different task management platforms. Again, there's thousands of them out there for you to choose from. So if you're using another app for some of the day-to-day productivity, go take a look at what's out there and leverage some of those, tie some of those into your Microsoft Teams environment to allow your users to get their work done right within Teams. So let's take a look at some of this. I covered those first three. We moved through those. I see an Adobe question there. Adobe integrates as well. So I'm actually going to share my screen, and let's take a look at Teams and some of that functionality that's available there. So let me get this up a minute. Share screen, and I want to share this one. And I'm actually going to jump over to a Teams environment here. So here I am in Microsoft Teams in my general channel here, or in my demo team with a few different channels. Let's jump over to maximizing Microsoft Teams because I don't have as much going on here. This is what a team or a channel within a team will look like out of the box. You go create a brand new channel, click on here, add a channel. This is what you're going to get. You're going to have your posts where you can have your conversations. You go type conversation in there. You have your files that are a SharePoint site. You can work with your files. You have your wiki. Frankly, side note, I don't like the wiki. I delete this every time when I create a team. But up here, you have this first thing up here is adding a tab. If you go in here and add a tab, you're going to get some of those applications that you can tie into Microsoft Teams right out of the bat. I actually use Teamwork for my task management, so you can have a Teamwork integration. Here's a bunch of those Microsoft ones. You can add flow, forms, lists, all right in here. So let's go in and add lists. Lists is kind of a nifty one to add. Go ahead and save, and this is going to pull in Microsoft Lists. We can go create a brand new list, and maybe one on issue tracker. Right within Teams, we'll just use this template because that makes it nice and easy. Issue tracker, icons, hug list, that list already exists. How about issue tracker 2? And go ahead and create that issue tracker list. This is using, again, those Microsoft lists on the back end, still just the SharePoint list. But now you can have an issue tracker leveraging those lists right within that team within Microsoft Teams. You can go in here and just start searching for other third-party ones. Somebody did ask about Adobe. Here's Adobe Acrobat that you can tie right into Teams. You can go in and tie your Adobe Creative Suite in there, your Creative Cloud, where you maybe have your Adobe files. Adobe Sign is one. You can see there are a bunch of different applications here, going back to those thousands and thousands of apps that you can tie right in. Zendesk is a popular one if you're using Zendesk for your ticketing system. So lots of tabs there to pull in to take advantage of within Microsoft Teams. The other place you also have apps is not necessarily within the tabs, but you have apps that you can install for yourself that add additional apps down the left side here. Viva Connections is one as well. This one just hit public preview, I think, in the last week, which allows you to pull an intranet into Teams from SharePoint. So you'll see up in Teams here at the top, I have IntelliJake. I put company name up there, company logo up there. If you click on it, it brings up, in theory, right? Hopefully. Now it's broken. What happens when I try to demo something? In theory, this brings up your SharePoint site. You get your SharePoint page right within Teams. So if you have corporate news on there, information you want to get out to your users, they don't have to go to their browser, open up SharePoint, and pull in the SharePoint page when it all works, right? It shows up right here. We talked about some of those other ones. If I click on the three dots, here's some of those apps that I use within my company by default. I mentioned Teamwork. If you want to put your OneNote in there, Microsoft Stream, some of those tasks, you can click on these different apps within Teams and pull that different information in. So this user doesn't have any tasks assigned, but if it did, or if they wanted to create a new task, I can go create new tasks within Microsoft Teams here, go ahead and add that in there, and now manage all of my tasks right within Microsoft Teams. And this is another place, just like the tabs at the top, you can go tie in other third-party applications. Teamwork is another great one because I use it. This one actually brings up a Teamwork settings here, goes in, gives me some information. I forgot this one does not do well with those tabs. Let's go find another third-party one here. Find an app. Google Analytics. Google Analytics is a popular one for tracking website traffic. If you want to go add your Google Analytics in here, you can go add Google Analytics, set up Google Analytics for a team. You can go add this into our general channel. General, doesn't want to find general. How about demo? There, general and our demo team. Add Google Analytics in, set up that connector to Google Analytics, and it's going to go tie Google Analytics in, put it within that general channel. My session expired for my login to Google, but it starts adding all of these different tabs up at the top of Microsoft Teams. Then the general one here, I can click across. Here's that OneNote integration into Microsoft Teams. Here is Project Oakdale. This is a Power App. So I had mentioned Power Apps earlier, bringing those apps right into Teams so people can work within those apps. So this is just a simple Power App where you can go in, add new records to the Power App, store them out in a database. There's a new version available since I've last updated this, but really go through and start tying all of those different services right into your Teams environment. You may have noticed too, in my environment, there were a lot of different apps there. From an admin perspective, if you do want to limit these apps that are available to your users, you can also go in, set up policies, configure those policies so certain apps are allowed or not allowed. Certain apps are installed by default. So for instance, in mine, this IntelliJake one, the Viva Connections, this one is actually set up with my organization by default. When somebody launches Teams, they're going to get that app in there. I do see I saw some questions in there too about those SharePoint sites, the Viva Connections, and publishing that SharePoint site. The Viva Connections works really good, and if I have time at the end, I'll share my screen and I'll get that back up on the screen here so we can look at that. But it is Viva Connections that you're going to want to look at for setting that up. The other one I can show you is if a certain site doesn't have a connector, we can actually go in here, and this is one of my favorite apps as well, is you can do a website. So you can literally go in here and type in any website. We'll do Bing, type in a URL, Go ahead and save this tab. It's a browser. It pops open a website right within Teams, so I can go search for it. I've had lots of clients do this when maybe they don't have a native app. They just want to bring people straight to a login page for a website they regularly use, a web-based application they usually use. This could be a SharePoint site as well. There is nothing wrong with linking this straight to a SharePoint site. Viva Connections does have some prereqs, a few more requirements in order to get Viva Connections in. The other nifty place you can actually put apps and tabs now is within your chat. So here is a test group chat I had with me and a test user. If you'll notice, just like you had in your Teams, you actually have add a tab now to a chat. And I get all of those same types of tabs and applications that I had before. So if we're having a chat about a particular Word document, I don't have any files at this location. That was a bad demo to do. I wonder if I have an Excel file. If you're having a discussion about a file out there, you can go add files. Let me try Excel and just see if I have nothing. I don't have any files out there. If you're having a chat about a file, you can add a file as a tab. You can add a website as a tab. So we want to go talk about Google this time. Google.com, we go paste in our URL for Google, save that one. So it doesn't necessarily require a team to have these tabs and these applications in there, especially if a certain group conversation or a conversation with somebody revolves around something specific. You want to have quick access to it within your chat. Go add that app to a group chat now, or to even a one-on-one chat. If I go here where it was a one-on-one chat with Ben, same type of thing. I can click the plus, add a tab, tie in some of those other apps, some of those integrations within SharePoint. So lots of flexibility and functionality within that app, tab, platform, and Teams to really build out your Teams environment, to use some of those third-party applications, use those other Microsoft applications, take advantage of approvals, Power Automate. I could sit here and go on and on about what you can do with these apps. You have your whole Power Automate platform right within Teams. But in the interest of time and making sure I leave time for questions, let's jump over to the last couple. Things you can do to to maximize that Teams usage. So moving on from the demo, training. To me, this one is super important. Everybody's here today. You're all here on this webinar to get training. You're here to train yourself. Why not provide your users with that same type of training? If you want to maximize your effectiveness with Teams, your efficiency, maximize that usage of Teams, make sure your users know how to use it. Tools aren't any good. I put a picture of firefighters on here. What would happen if you took a bunch of firefighters, gave them all the tools that firefighters use, and expected them to effectively and efficiently fight a fire? They have absolutely no idea what to do. They don't know when they're supposed to use an axe to chop a hole in a roof to let smoke out, or when that's going to cause a massive influx of oxygen and make the fire worse. Where are they supposed to spray the hose if there's a fire? So how can you expect your users to take Teams and to just start using it effectively and efficiently if you're not giving them that type of training and how they can use it? How can they use these apps? What do tasks do for them? How do they use approvals? How can they go in and schedule meetings, schedule group chats, saving chats? There's so much you can do in Teams, and if your users don't know how to take advantage of it, you're not going to be able to maximize it within your organization. Some ideas are lunch and learns, like use Teams and schedule a webinar to show them how Teams works. Let them sit there in their lunch break while you give them some training, show them a couple things on Teams. Some of my YouTube videos are Teams in 2-minute video. This is how you save chat. This is how you start a group chat. This is how you can leverage a document. This is how you can create a new tab. Do just short little snippet videos. Host them in Stream within your environment. If you have another video library, host it in there to let your users go in and actually see how they can do different things, different tidbits that they can do to take advantage of Teams. Tip sheets. Go create a tip sheet and pin it at the top. Make it a tab in Teams. Quick tips for Teams. Go up into that team, pin a Word document. I should have done it over here instead of in the chat. Pin a Word document in a team and have that be the quick tips for Teams. Or dedicate a team. Create a team within Teams that's just Teams ideas, sharing your tips about Teams. Give your users a spot where they can use Teams to learn more about Teams. So I think training is big. I think it's one that can often be overlooked. You give your users Teams. You expect them to just be able to use it, but they don't know everything that they can do within Teams. And then finally, governance. This hits on that fact that Teams can sprawl. Kind of like John said at the beginning, my history is in SharePoint. I've been doing SharePoint for over 15 years. I have seen sprawl in SharePoint. Sprawl is defined as an uncontrolled growth, unplanned growth. You look at the pictures of these two cities here. One of them, it looks like roads just go everywhere, houses go everywhere. The other one, everything is neatly organized. It's in rows. It was planned. That dirt strip down the middle looks like it was planned for a highway to account for traffic in the future. Plan your growth of Teams. It doesn't mean Teams can't be big. It doesn't mean Teams can't have a lot of teams. It means that you have a handle on it, that you don't have 10 different teams for HR because everybody in HR created their own team. It means you don't have a team every year when you have a new holiday party at your company. You have some method for managing the life cycle of teams. This could be a request or creation process where you actually go in and disable the ability for just anybody to create a team. Any user by default, out of the box Microsoft 365, has the ability to go create their own team. It creates a new SharePoint site. It can quickly grow out of control. Put a process in place. Use your ticketing system. I've built some right within SharePoint using Power Apps and Flow and Power Automate. There's more and more third-party products out there as well that help you manage that life cycle of a team. When does one get created? How long do we keep it around for? Can we delete the 4th of July party team or the holiday party team after we have our holiday party? And then when the next year comes around and we need another team to plan another holiday party, we can go in and create a new team. How long do these certain teams have to live for? Set up some type of review process. When are you going to go in and review all of the teams that have been created? How do you decide when you're going to delete them, when you're going to archive them? Put some type of control, some type of governance in place for Microsoft Teams so that it doesn't grow out of control on you. There's nothing worse than going into a mess and trying to figure out where it is, how am I going to use it, where is everything. Users are going to be more efficient when it's a well-organized. I don't like using the word controlled because you also do want to give them flexibility. There's some balance there. You make it too hard, you're going to go use something else. But have processes in place to help you with your utilization of Teams to make it as efficient as you possibly can. And this, again, is my favorite topic. I'm going to look at sensitivity labels when it comes to governance. This is a new, relatively new functionality that came out within Microsoft Teams that I haven't seen many people implementing. I haven't seen many people using, but it can help with that governance process. I can also show a little bit about what I've done for requests within Microsoft Teams to give you a good idea of kind of what you can start doing around a request process and how you can put some limits and controls around that. So I'm going to share my screen again. And let's actually jump over to my admin center in Microsoft Teams. So over here, I am signed in as an admin. This is one of those things you're going to do within the Compliance Center in Microsoft 365. So you can either go straight to compliance.microsoft.com, or if you go open up your admin center, you can go to admin.microsoft.com, and from within your admin center, go down and look at all your other admin centers, go to your Compliance Center. Right here is an admin center. Within your Compliance Center, you have information protection as one of the solutions. If you don't see it over here, I've gone in and added a bunch to mine. You can click on your catalog here, and this is going to show you all of those different solutions that you have available for compliance in Microsoft 365. You're going to have your information protection as one of those solutions. You can open it right from here. If you want it to show up on the left side, you can actually pin it to navigation right here. And this is what's going to add it to this navigation down the left side. So back in information protection, you have these different labels that you can apply to your environment. I have a bunch of labels in here, and you can see I have different scopes for these. A lot of these are scoped to files or emails, but I have a few here that you can see I have site on this one, or I have the unified group here, purview. If you have site or unified group, this is what allows you to actually start using these labels within Microsoft Teams. The real power of this comes in now when you're going to go in and set up one of these labels. So let's actually go create a new one so you can see this process. We're going to go in and we're going to create a demo 2 label. We'll give it that. We'll give it a display name. Users, this is Teams and sites used for demo purposes. So we're going to go create this new label. Now we have these scopes, and by default, groups and sites may not be enabled. I actually do have a YouTube channel that walks through setting this up. There's some PowerShell commands to run, some settings you need to get in place to get groups and sites to show up. More than what we can do right now, and frankly, it's really hard to go in and demo it when it's already turned on. For this one, we're just going to do groups and sites, though. I'm not going to worry about files and emails. Files and emails we didn't set up. You'll notice there's nothing to select here. These are options if you're going to do files and emails. Groups and sites is where it gets interesting. So you want to put some governance in place. Again, when can people do certain things within Teams? When are they allowed to invite external users? When are they not allowed to invite external users? When are they allowed to share? When is conditional access put in place? So we're going to do both of these items right here and click Next. Once we get in here, we can start defining these. So if someone chooses Demo 2 as a label when they create Teams, what options do they have for privacy? Are you going to allow anyone in the organization to access demo sites, or are you only going to limit this to the private teams where not anybody can access this? Or you can set it to none, and you can say, nope, nobody's going to be able to, or none means they can pick. You're not going to enforce a certain setting. You are going to allow them to choose. And then if you want Microsoft 365 group owners to invite external people as guests to this team, if you don't want them to. So let's say for demo, it's going to be public. Demo, we're going to let group owners add people. That's okay. We can do that. And then next, external sharing. So those files in Teams, and this is important to remember, files in Teams our files in SharePoint. So are you going to control external sharing from SharePoint sites with this label on it? Do you want anybody to be able to get in? You can use anonymous sharing links. Or are you going to limit it to guests, creating new guests or existing guests, only guests, or is this only for people in your organization? We could say this is only people in our organization. And then using conditional access. This is another nice feature that you can have where if a site's labeled a certain way, allow full access from desktop apps. I can open files in this site from Word or from Excel or from mobile apps. Or maybe, you know what, this information is tightly controlled. People should only be able to access this content in a browser. That also means they can't download it to devices. So you can make sure data that is supposed to stay in Teams, supposed to stay in SharePoint, supposed to say file attachments that are supposed to stay in SharePoint. This is going to put that web-only access in there, or frankly, you can just outright block access from unmanaged devices. So this is also a key up here. This is for devices that are not hybrid Azure AD joined or enrolled in Intune. So this is going to put some of those conditions in place so that if I go home, pick up my kid's computer and try to access the environment or download a file, I can't do it. I can only do it from that work laptop or that work computer. Next, we can go through and create this label. Once it's created, you can then go through and publish this label for use. So the next thing is label policies. Who can use this label? How can it be used within Teams? What people have the ability to use that label? So now the cool thing is if I go into my Teams environment in Microsoft 365, let me go ahead and sign in. Had me signed out. Let me go authenticate and get into Teams. Keep an eye on the time so we have time for questions. I do see questions are in there. We'll just use the web app because that's easier. So now those users that do have the ability to go in and create teams in Teams, all of it's acting up on me today. Teams just does not want to cooperate. There it goes. There, now you can actually see my Viva Connections too. So this is Viva Connections. This is my SharePoint site in that top Viva Connections here with all of my SharePoint navigation, files, documents, everything else to browse through SharePoint. What I was actually going to show here, though, is once I go over to Teams and I click to join or create a new team here, let's go create a new team. We're going to go from scratch. Up here, I have that sensitivity label. So I already have some of those sensitivity labels created. If this doesn't have a certain sensitivity, you can see I can choose anything. I can do a private site. I can do a public site. I can do whatever I want to. Let's go in and say this is an internal site. Internal, I can do everything. Let's go in and say this is a client site. You'll notice all my client sites, I don't allow client sites to be private. They're going to have to be public. So you can only choose public. Same thing, demo sites, they're not going to be private. Partner sites, YouTube sites, I had that one set to private as well. That one's only private. So if I'm going to set up a site for a partner, a team for a partner, now I can only do, I saw a comment here, I'm breaking up and pausing. I don't know if that's the audio or the video. Hopefully it gets better. I'm on my phone, so hopefully the audio is okay. And hopefully the recording comes out okay too, and you can go catch this. Okay, I did see in the chat my audio sounds great. It might be the video. I may be having some bandwidth thing, but I will keep going and hopefully it's okay or the recording comes out okay. But that's where I can go in and, again, set up those sensitivity labels. So this is going to allow me to put some of that governance in place. It's a lot easier to train users on this team is for a client or for a partner or for a demo versus am I supposed to choose private or when am I supposed to choose public? When should external sharing be turned on, or when should external sharing be turned off? So all of those sensitivity labels help you with making sure those teams are created in the right manner, in a way that adheres to whatever settings, whatever policies, whatever compliance things you need to have set up. So again, one of those little used features that can really help when you want users to be able to go in and create teams, but maybe put a little bit more structure around them. I do have a couple minutes. The other thing I have done, we talked a little bit about provisioning sites. One of the ways I've done this is I actually created a Power App within Teams where if people need a new team, instead of having this join or create a team down here at the bottom, you can go, discard this one. You can go set it so only certain people can join or create teams. This button goes away for people. What you can then do is go in, create a form. So in this case, I did a Power App. If people go create a new group or team request here, it actually opens up a Power App and asks them to put in certain information. The title, the display name, some of the other information around public or private, those types of requests, if they want teams included or not, owners, department names, whatever it may be. They can go in, fill this out, hit submit, and then in the back end, you can use Power Automate or a Flow in Power Automate, used to be Microsoft Flow, to actually go in and automatically create that team in the background so you can put an approval process in place. The other thing you can do if you go this route is I actually now have a list right here of all the teams that are created, what type of request it was, if I ask for a project end date, if I ask for the department that owns it, and I can set up a process now to go in, review these types of requests, set up a flow to run on a daily basis. What teams are in this list that have a project end date that's less than today? Can we go in and start cleaning up some of those project sites? Again, building this out could also be an entire presentation, but I'm hoping to give you some ideas, different things you can do to help make sure Teams doesn't grow out of control, makes it a little bit easier for your users to use it in an effective and in an efficient manner. So that is my 5 tips for going in and maximizing Teams. Take advantage of those apps. Take advantage of the whole collaboration suite, not just the chat meeting functionality. Go in, set up some governance, put some policies in place, set up, now I'm blanking on what my 3 and 4 were in the middle there. I can go back to the slide. Push to audience. My 5 things. I'm supposed to know them, right? Because I put them all in. There you go. Those 5 things. Sprawl, training, integrate your third-party projects, larger suite. It's more than chat meetings. So hopefully you found it all helpful. Hopefully you got some ideas here on what you can do, different ways you can maximize it. And we have, looks like maybe 8-9 minutes here for some questions.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah,
not a problem.
That was jam-packed. We do have quite a few questions here. We'll get to them here. Remember, you can type your questions in the Q&A box at any time. We'll do our best to get to all of them. Here's one. I'm looking at expanding our use of Teams and possibly SharePoint. Are there Microsoft partners that I can connect with?
I know a great one. It's Intelligent. No. There are. I mean, little self-promotion there, right? No. It's something I do. There are a lot of different partners out there. There's small ones like me. There's large ones. Frankly, I want to be careful about going out and naming names. Just due to once you start naming names, you always forget names. There are lots of partners out there there's a partner website, and I don't know what the URL is, where you can actually go out and look up all of the different partners and what areas they specialize in. The short answer is there's a lot of partners out there. There's too many to name. Again, I do it, but you're not going to hurt my feelings if you want to go find somebody else too.
Awesome. Maybe they can look for that website. Okay, here's another one. If a person leaves the company, can you delete their history from Teams?
Oh, that's a really good question. I have never had that question before, and I have never tried to do that. I don't believe there is a way to go in and do a broad, sweeping, delete every message that this user ever posted in Teams. I am not aware of any functionality that allows that. You can go scroll through conversation histories and delete individual conversations. I know, like, some of the GDPR things and the whole right to forget, that may, if it's in there, it's very deep enough that I'm not aware of where it is or how you would do it. But I'm not aware of a way to do that. Because you also can run into some compliance things. There's a lot of functionality built into around retention policies, and I know some of that also applies to team chat. Go look me up. So one thing, go search for Ben Stedjink, and you'll find me on the internet. There are no other Ben Stedjink. So if you search for Ben Stedjink, you can find me. If you want to send me that question, like via Twitter or some way so I have a way to reach out to you, I actually am curious to go look this up. This has me intrigued, and I'd be more than happy to just do a little research and try to get back to you. So again,
awesome.
Through the website, through Twitter, through LinkedIn, any of those, connect with Ben Stedjink, and chances are it's me, because I don't know of any others.
We have a thoughtful audience, that's for sure. Okay, here's another one. Do users need an audio conferencing license to have a phone number?
So if you are going to do a phone number, and that user has an individual phone number, there's actually a separate phone system license and then a domestic or international calling plan. So the way the licensing works for that is, I believe, phone system, the system itself that provides you, so think of a phone system as it provides you voicemail, it provides you that auto attendant functionality, it provides you some of that phone system type functionality, is $8 a user a month. If you want like a PSTN number, I want to call 123-456-7890. That requires a calling plan. I think they're still called calling plans. You can get domestic, and international. It used to be 12. I think that one may have actually gone down a little bit. But that calling plan is what gives you that PSTN phone number. So ballpark, you need to think you can do a phone system, so you could have voicemail for internal people that call you. It's not going to give you a phone number, but you still get the phone functionality. If you want that phone number, you have to go get one of the calling plans to get that phone number. The audio conferencing functionality is a separate license, and it is included, I believe, with the E5 plans. And it might be like $4 as an add-on. That's what gives you the dial-in functionality for like the Teams meeting. So if you're going to hold a Teams meeting and you want people to be able to call into it, that's going to be that conference calling.
Okay, we've got quite an interest in this this capability here. We've got a couple questions about call center capabilities. Here's one that's just straightforward. Where can I learn more about call center capabilities within Teams?
Docs.microsoft.com is going to have some of it. I don't know if there's anything on Microsoft Learn. Let me see if I can find the URL really quick for that. Phone
you can follow up offline maybe.
And Teams. Yeah, same thing. Reach out to me. They do have what is a phone system in Microsoft Teams. Docs.microsoft.com/Microsoft Teams/what is phone system in Office 365. and I don't know, I'll throw this in the chat, John, and if you want to put this as an answer.
Sure.
That is a website that'll at least get you started with what is the phone system in Microsoft 365.
Okay. I'll leave that to Mallory to make it available. Okay, here's another one along the same, have you or clients integrated Teams to replace a separate call center application, i.e. replace Enghouse or Touchpoint?
I'm going to be very careful when you say call center functionality. Call center functionality can be put in there. If you're talking like a 500-person call center, Teams may not be the best solution. I would say small call center, small help desk, probably going to work okay. I have done some of that with like automated attendance and call queues and calling groups for smaller, I'll say smaller call center type functionality. I have not seen it implemented it when you start talking like call centers of hundreds of people or that magnitude. That's when people do tend to go with a little bit more of a call center centric phone system, just because there does tend to still be more functionality for large call centers within a phone system that's designed specifically for that.
Awesome. Hey, Ben, that's all the time we have for questions. Thank you so much for a great session. It was awesome. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Thank you. And again, if you have questions, if I didn't get to them, I may be slow on Twitter or something, but don't feel free to reach out and I'll answer as best I can and as timely as I can on those other mediums if I didn't get to them. So thank you all. Loved it. Hope you guys all have a great day and a great weekend.
Thanks, man. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back at the top of the hour for our second session, Top Microsoft Teams Best Practices for Today's Workforce, presented by the one and only Howard Cohen, one of our favorite presenters. He is a senior consultant at HMC right now and led by my colleague, David Rammel, who leads the editorial team at Virtualization and Cloud Review. Many thanks to Ben Stejink for a great session and to our sponsor, video conferencing services provider Blue Jeans, for making it possible. Now would be a great time to check out those extra resources on your console provided by our sponsor. Remember, we're giving away a GoPro Hero 9 streaming action camera to one lucky attendee at the end of the third session, but you must be present to win, so stay tuned. Back in a few.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you to our speakers, and of course our sponsor, Blue Jeans, for underwriting this summit and allowing us to bring you this great content. I'm David Rammel, editor of Virtualization and Cloud Review, and I'm here to moderate the second session of today's summit, Top Microsoft Teams Best Practices for Today's Workforce. Our speaker for this session is Howard Cohen, senior consultant at HMC right now. Howard has been an executive IT veteran for more than 35 years, who today writes for and about the IT channel. He's a frequent speaker at IT industry events that include Microsoft Inspire, Citrix Synergy Summit, and many others. And he frequently hosts and presents webinars for many vendors and publications. Howard, it's great to have you here again. Please take it away.
Thank you, David. And thank you all for joining us today. Teams is a very popular topic. I'd just like to pick up on a question from the last session about whether or not somebody can be completely erased from Teams. And the thought that occurred to me is that if you can't do that, Teams would not be GDPR compliant. You have that right to be forgotten. So I suspect that you'll find that function in there somewhere. Hope that helps. Meanwhile, today we're here to talk about Microsoft Teams best practices. And I'd like to start with a quick look that says best practices is in the eye of the practitioner, the person who's doing the practicing. There's lots of different opinions about best practices. And quite frankly, when you're talking about Teams, you're talking about a lot. There's a lot to be considered and a lot of best practices we can cover. I'm going to guarantee you that this will not be a comprehensive session. I don't think we could cover all of Teams, even if I took up all 3 sessions or more. So a few things I want you to remember as we move through my presentation. Number one, Teams is a major Microsoft platform. Major. Which means it can be overwhelming. Think SharePoint. Think about how much functionality there is in SharePoint. Originally, it was 6 different products, all put together to make one big platform. Think about Dynamics. Think about Dynamics CRM, which is now the Swiss Army knife of CRM applications. So Microsoft has a habit of creating enormous, highly functional, greatly varied platforms. A lot to learn, a lot to think about, a lot to know. So it can be overwhelming. One of the easiest things to do with Teams is to make it confusing. That's a piece of cake, and a lot of people do. Unfortunately, a lot of people who rush in and just kind of go at it with Teams find that it's very confusing until they take time to organize themselves. Not so much organizing Teams, it's organizing themselves in the way they use it. But if that's the easiest thing to do, the second easiest thing to do is to underuse it. That is to say, not take advantage of all the power that's available to you in Teams. This is also not inconsistent with other Microsoft products. It's been said for a long time that probably nobody uses more than 10% of Excel, as an example, 10% of what Excel is capable of. That may be less true today. There may be people who are getting up to 15 or 20%, but there's just so much there. And so, anticipate that you're going to be constantly finding new things that you're able to do that you didn't think of before. And that's good news. Life should be a process of constant discovery. So my best admonition to you is don't rush. Don't rush. Go slow. Start using Teams, start using the simple, straightforward functions, which we'll be reviewing today. And as you become adept with those and as you learn more about them, start to add more and add more. But do so, if you can, under a plan. A plan is a very important word that we use here, and it helps a lot when approaching Teams. Remember also that one of the original design ethics of Teams was to keep the whole team in Teams the whole time. That is, you're going to find more and more hooks allowing you to get to everything you might want to use, every application, every resource. You're going to find the ability to connect those in through Teams. Teams should be your portal to everything. And it's not the first platform to try to be that. I remember, back in the late 80s, early 90s, years ago, Citrix introduced a product called Enfuse. It was the first attempt that I can remember at being all things to all products. Well, Teams has the benefit of all that experience for decades, and they do a remarkable job of giving you access to everything. So, take advantage of it, because keeping people in one portal, one place, makes it much easier for teams to function better. Okay, before we move on through all the different functionalities, I'd like to take a quick look under the hood of Teams so that you have a couple of basic factoids. Number one, it's built on Microsoft 365 Groups and Microsoft Graph. It shares its security capabilities with all the rest of the Microsoft 365 products in the suite. Microsoft 365 has got better security than just about any platform out there. Microsoft has invested heavily in making their platforms incredibly secure. Some of you will remember back watching poor Steve Ballmer sweat when security weaknesses were discovered in some Microsoft products back in the early 2000s. Well, those times are long past. Microsoft has done a tremendous job of giving us much better security, far better compliance capability, and the ability to manage our environments far more thoroughly. It leverages Active Directory so that you've got terrific IAM, terrific identity and access management, which, by the way, just became infinitely easier. Look for an upcoming report on the passing of the password. Microsoft has announced that they are moving to a passwordless environment. They actually just announced this on Wednesday. You'll be using Microsoft Authenticator, SMS, called out codes, but you won't have to track and create and update passwords anymore. So the world just became a happier place for all computer users everywhere. Okay, when you create a team, this is really impressive. When you create a team, you get a new Microsoft 365 group for that entire team. You get a SharePoint online site to use for that team. A SharePoint online document library to store all the documents for that team. A shared email box for the team so people can email to that team. An online shared calendar that everybody can use to keep track of everything they're doing together. And a OneNote notebook. Now, for those of you who are not using OneNote, check it out. It's one of my favorite products. OneNote, I have 20 years of notes, personal notes, stored in OneNote. If OneNote suddenly went away, I don't know what I'd do. But it's incredibly flexible, incredibly powerful, and you get a notebook to share with everybody, automatically created for you when you create each team. You also get integration with the Microsoft Planner and with Power BI. So think about what it would take to set all of that up manually. Forget about that. All that time is saved for you. And when you create a team, you get all of these capabilities all set up for you, all ready to rock and roll. That alone is incredibly, incredibly powerful functionality. Now, with all of this, where do you begin? Where do you get started? And of course, any of you who have attended any of my presentations know I almost always give our good friend Simon Sinek a plug. His book, Start With Why, is tremendous, but the concept is even more tremendous. It's important to always start with why. Why do you need this team? If you're creating a team and you're taking up all those resources that we just saw created for us when you create a team, why this team? Why are you creating it? Why do you need it? Make sure it has a mission, a justification. What's it meant to accomplish? Okay, the outcomes that you're looking for from this team. Get a good handle on that. Get a good definition of that, because you will refer back to it many times as the team continues to work. Once you've created a team, we'll be talking about how you create channels within the team to facilitate all the different functional groups within the team. Most teams, a baseball team has a third baseman, a second baseman, a shortstop, outfielder, pitcher, different roles. Here, we think of them as different channels. And why are you creating a channel? What's the need for it? Which of the subgroups or subfunctions within the team really require their own channel? Let's be purposeful about it. And then there's the big why. The big why is how you structure. Why are you structuring the teams this way? You're going to have multiple teams within your organization. It's going to form a hierarchy of its own. Don't let it happen by accident. Be purposive and be deliberate in how you organize your different teams within your organization. It will pay dividends later on. Okay, so we've gone through the prelims. Let's take a look at all the various functionalities that you're going to find inside of Teams. And they're all listed on the left. And rather than go through them all, let's start with the first one. Let's start with communications. Okay, and as it happens, Teams has a broad variety of communication capabilities, starting with chat. Now, it all started with chat, right? The earliest communication, I remember back when sysops had Telnet and TimeNet for their mainframe computers, and all people could do was chat back and forth with each other using their keyboards. Yes, I am that old. That's why I call myself a senior consultant. But everything started with chat, and even to this day, chat is the easiest way for us to communicate with each other. Most every conversation these days starts with chat. There's a stat recently that there are more chats going on each day than there are telephone calls. I don't think that's really surprising, but it seems to be. It's great. It's asynchronous. You don't both have to be there. You can start a chat, and when the other person sees it, they can continue it. Some chats could take days. But you can get information back and forth fairly quickly, informally. It's very handy to have. And you can even see if somebody's there just by using chat. Chat definitely beats phone for quick. You're not going to hang on a chat for half an hour or more. It beats email for attention grabbing. People have to check their inbox to get their chats. Usually chats feature notification. So you're reaching out to somebody and they're aware that you're trying to reach them. Now, chat also starts with presence, right? There's a little green light that says this person's available, or a yellow light that says they're away, or a red light that says they're in a meeting. The one thing you must remember about presence is that presence lies. Sorry, back to life. Presence lies. People forget to put themselves on away, and it looks like they're there. They're not there. And vice versa, people put themselves on away, they get back and don't remember to put themselves back on available. And so presence is not always thoroughly reliable. There is some automation in presence. When you're in a meeting and it's in your calendar, presence knows that and it turns you red. And if that meeting somehow didn't happen, or if it was very short, you may stay red for the duration of that meeting on your calendar. Presence has limited trustworthiness. But as I said earlier, it's asynchronous. You leave a chat message for somebody, they're going to get a notification, and as soon as they do see it, they're going to get back to you. You can start a chat one-to-one, and nowadays you can pull people into it. You can have multiple people in a chat group, and you can be discussing whatever it is needs to be discussed. So there's great flexibility in the wonderful medium of chat. Sometimes, however, it may be more efficient to just turn it into a phone call. And of course, with Teams, that just takes a click. You just click your way from chat to call, and off you go. And by the way, yes, I am recommending as a best practice, start with chat. Because presence is not totally reliable, send a quick chat message. Can I give you a call? Are you there? Are you busy? Whatever you want to say, but get their attention. And this way, your phone call isn't an intrusion into their day. It's polite. So when it needs more, interaction, faster, more, closer, a call is a better thing now. In terms of calling in Teams, any calling you do between people in your company or even between locations in your company, that's all free. It's carried on your network, and that's great. So you can call anybody from any smartphone, any tablet. These days, you can even call using a soft phone on your PC. Personally, I've gotten rid of my desk telephone. It's gone. I just tap on the screen and I'm dialing. This call that I made to be on this presentation today is coming through my soft phone. Lots of flexibility there. And by the way, when I say you can call anybody, you can call anybody. As was mentioned in the earlier session, there are calling plans you can elect. There are also many calling providers that you can easily integrate with Teams to give you full public switch telephone network calling to anybody, anywhere, anytime. Sometimes, however, it's a little more personal. You want a more personal touch, especially, I'm going to say it, during COVID, we all learned how viable it is to have a personal conversation over video. We used to think, no, that's not possible. A lot of people shied away from it. A lot of people complained they didn't want people to see them sitting in their home office or what have you. Hey, listen, I think we all get it now. Video is a very viable way to talk to somebody. And you also get terrific paralinguistic cues, paralinguistics, other than speech. So the expression on my face, which you can't see right now, If you could see it, you'd know that I'm really happy to be giving you this presentation. People gesture. People wrap their arms around themselves. People sniff at certain things. People stay silent. They look away. They look at you. All of those are paralinguistic cues that many people have been trained to pick up on and to evaluate. And there are some listeners that you're talking to, when you're talking in person at least, or on video, that they're hearing a lot more than you think they are because they know how to interpret your paralinguistic cues. The only one that I think of that is a complete loss right now, where you can't get this conveyed in any way, is olfactory cues, aromas, odors. Someday maybe we'll have smell-o-vision, and then that will be conquered. But for the time being, we're saved from smelling each other by using video. You can conduct site visits with video. Flip around to the front camera and take people around a site. Great for architects. Great for computer technicians who need to show somebody something and how something looks, so they can say, oh, okay, change this plug or change that. So when you need to show somebody something, video is a great way to do it. Video, next step up, is conferencing. Yes, we can do one-on-one video. We do a lot of it. Some of us who are living in far-flung regions, this is the only way we get to see a friendly face. But conferencing brings teams together, even though they may be all over the place, all around the world. And especially now, when it's been difficult or dangerous to travel, this has been a tremendous boon. People can conference with each other across great distances. You can have a scheduled event where everybody logs into the video conference, and our friends at Blue Jeans help facilitate that in a lot of ways. You can have an ad hoc video conference, pull people in from a list. You can pick them off a list, and if they're available, they can join in, and suddenly you've got a group talking about something. As you're having your conference, you can have it recorded, and that recording can be transcribed for later notes. I can't tell you how valuable that is, because now you can focus on the conversation and not worry about taking notes, which in the past, that was a dream world. You can provide relevant materials right away in the midst of a video collaboration or a video conference. You can make people, give people a Word doc or an Excel spreadsheet or whatever materials you need. You can share your screen to do that. And while we're talking about it, you can review your planner. You can review your calendar so everybody can figure out when we can meet next or when next steps can be taken. The next step in conferencing is collaboration. And Teams is a remarkable collaboration platform. This is real collaboration. This is people working together to achieve a purpose, a specific outcome. The video, you really can feel like you're together. Our friends at Blue Jeans, perfect example. If a bunch of people are working in the office, as is starting to happen now, it's kind of silly for them all to be sitting at their own computer and watching the event. Why don't they just get together in a conference room if they can? Blue Jeans makes it possible for you to connect that conference room, the entire conference room, to a Teams meeting. And so the people who are at home can meet through their individual computers. The team that's in the office can meet in the conference room, be together, which is a good thing, and participate just as readily. You can use app sharing to add show to tell. You don't have to just talk at each other. You can put things on the screen and show people PowerPoint presentations, Excel spreadsheets, recent articles online, all kinds of things. It's easy to share your screen in Teams. Then there's simultaneous editing, which is accessible to you. If you put up a Word document and you have several people on that conference, all of you can be editing the same document together. You can be discussing it while you edit it. You can see where other people are editing while you're editing in another place. It's very clear to you what's going on. And so you're truly collaborating, truly working together. And I know a lot of people who are hesitant to use simultaneous editing, and I'm not exactly sure why. I think they may think it's complex or difficult. I encourage all of you to consider simultaneous editing to be a best practice and start familiarizing yourself with it if you haven't already. Tremendous increase in efficiency. You'll get things done in a fraction of the time it would take in any other way. You can all see what each other are doing, so you know if he's editing that place, I'm not going to edit over there. I'll edit over here, or I'll wait. And then there's also a whiteboard functionality. Don't sell whiteboards short. We all still live on them. And you can use the whiteboard functionality to put a whiteboard up in front of everybody and draw on it and share thoughts, share ideas, share direction. A tremendous capability that easy to do in Teams. And of course, any documents you create collaboratively are immediately stored right there. You don't have to worry about somebody, oh, he didn't save it? It's saved. There you are. You're right there together. It gets saved. Everybody can access it who should be able to access it. True collaboration in a truly interactive environment where you can see, hear, and do everything together. And that leaves us at history. The good news is that even chat, everything you do is preserved. You can go back and refer to it later on. You can refer to the things people said, the ideas they had, the concepts they came up with, the thoughts they shared, and even the commitments they made. You can hold people's feet to the fire pretty nicely with chat history. So, be sure to turn to it when you need to. Okay, so that's the entire picture of communications inside of Teams. Now, let's take a look at Teams themselves when we create a team. Okay, my recommendation, best practice, start small. If you're creating a team, create it with just a few people. Create it only with the people who are needed to function inside that team. And a team is a group of people who share a specific outcome. They want to get the same thing done, so put them together in a team. The good news is because everything's documented in Teams, if you add somebody later, it's really easy for them to come up to speed. All the documentation is there in Teams, and they can familiarize themselves and bring themselves up to the rest of the group. So strong recommendation that you start small, grow as you need to. It's a very organic environment. It's very easy to flex and change. You can build very quick teams, for a very short-term need. We'll talk in a few minutes about some applications where very, very simple things get full teams because they need them. It's a group of people who share a common desired outcome. You can have many teams. What I was just referring to is that I know of a Microsoft partner who creates a team every time they get a service call. Every service call. Because of all the functionality it gives you, all the sharing capability, so that every technician or engineer who's involved in that call can document what they're doing right there in Teams. They don't have to go looking for someplace else to put it. They build a quick runbook for that particular event. All there in Teams. Very easy, very automatic. And, of course, recorded for posterity. If you're doing a customer project, you definitely should have a team with all of the different subgroups, the guys who are going to configure everything, the guys who are going to install everything, the guys who are going to fine-tune everything, integrate everything, train people. There's so many functions within just the tech environment that would fall as channels underneath the team. Some schools create a new team for each class every semester so everybody in the class can share that team and work together. I mentioned channels. There is a general channel created for every team you create. Don't mess with it. Just use it for anything that has to do with everybody. There are also, you can create focus channels and choose a few people within the team that particular channel is for. This is great because it means, for example, that the marketing team doesn't have to see every message that the design team shares with each other. Not for nothing, but they probably won't understand most of them, and vice versa. So the design team doesn't have to see all the marketing messages that are going back and forth. And the finance team doesn't have to see any of that. It's a lot of noise. And we do a lot of channel choking in our industry, and we enable other people to do a lot of channel choking. Here's an opportunity to back off of that and to really create finely tuned channels for specific messages to go to for specific purposes. It's the reason behind channels. Of course, too many channels is just that, too many channels. It can become confusing. If you have a person who suddenly finds themselves members of 17 channels, how do they keep track of all of that? You have to take it from the user's perspective as well, and keep careful control over the number of channels created. This is why I say start with why. For each channel you're going to create, think first about why you're going to have that channel, who it's going to serve, what it's going to provide, and create the channel only when you can answer all those questions and know that you've got a truly valuable and viable channel here. Some channels can be moderated. You can establish a moderator for each channel. This is especially useful when you're using a channel to make announcements to specific groups, where it's not going to be interactive. There's not going to be a whole lot of discussion. You just want somebody to be able to say, okay, today's specials on the menu are. The moderator can be the only one to make posts on that channel. The moderator can determine who else can create posts on that. So it's very good for making announcements. Best practice, again, create and use well-designed naming conventions. People should be able to instantly understand what a channel is, what it's for, where it fits, why you have it. And I strongly recommend that you establish that convention and make sure that everybody uses it. Just as I said, to avoid too many channels, again, avoid channel choking. Too many messages. And anybody who's been on Twitter knows what it's like when you get too many messages. It's just overload. How do you keep track of all of it? How do you know you're not missing the important things? Try to avoid message overload by breaking it out into channels, certainly, but also, establish a policy that governs why you would send a message, and just get people to stop and think just for a moment before they send a message. Does this require a message? Is this something you couldn't just chat somebody? Is this something you couldn't just walk down the hall and talk to somebody about? Make every effort to keep the channels open and not clog them up with tons and tons of messages. It's helpful when you want to make sure certain people or certain groups pay attention to a particular message. You can tag them. You can use the @mention anywhere you want to @mention a particular team, a particular channel, a particular person, and make sure that they get a notification that they are mentioned in a particular message, somewhere in a particular channel, in a particular team. As a user, if you find some interesting or useful information in a chat that's going on inside of a channel, you can bookmark it so that you can easily get back to it anytime you need to. There is nothing more obnoxious than having to scroll through and through and through to try to find a message that you read a few days ago. Here you can bookmark them and then go back and find that bookmark. Similarly, if there are channels that you want to be kept aware of at all times, you can make those channels your favorite channels. So if you are assigned to 17 channels, pick the one or two that are most important to you and make them your favorite. And in terms of channel choking, one of the best suggestions I can make, and I make it somewhere else, I apologize, is to create a water cooler channel. It'll pop up on one of my slides. I thought it was there. The water cooler channel is a good place to joke around, a good place to share funny stories. It is a better place to do those things than any other channel because you just don't need to be doing that in a business channel. Talking about integrations, of course, Microsoft Teams is part of Microsoft 365. It's integrated with all of these applications. You share a calendar with them. You share all calendars with them. You can share OneNote notebooks with other people in the group. You can share Microsoft Planner. You can share Microsoft Word documents, Excel documents, Outlook messaging and calendars, PowerPoint presentations. You can share files stored in OneDrive or SharePoint. And you can share Yammer chats as well. All of this is integrated beautifully together. The entire stack is here inside Teams, and Teams is really your portal to all of it. And also, but wait, there's more. There are tons of third-party integrations out there. And you visit the Microsoft Teams site, and there's pages dedicated to all the third-party integrations that are available that work inside of Microsoft Teams. Also, if you act now, if you have any URLs, any web pages that you think are really valuable resources that everybody in the team should always be able to get at, you can turn them into tabs that are right there in your Teams window. They can click on them right from there. Again, that portal capability. All your resources, applications, third-party applications, websites, it should all be accessible easily within the Teams environment. There's that slide, that bullet. Create that water cooler channel so that everybody can have a place to go talk about what happened this last weekend, share body stories, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When it comes to files, the good news, again, is that you can share OneDrive files across Teams. You can use SharePoint lists, SharePoint file management. And the good news is that if they're in the cloud, you can get to them with any device from anywhere as long as you have credentials to do so, as long as you're authorized to do so. And once again, because they're in the cloud, they enjoy the security afforded by Microsoft. By Microsoft 365 platform, by Active Directory, Azure Active Directory. Not only are they secured, they're also automatically backed up. Replication takes place between multiple Microsoft Azure data centers. And a lot of people have shut down their own redundant sites to take advantage of Microsoft's redundancy. Certainly there are those among you who want belt and suspenders. You should definitely create your own backup capability, but be aware that automatically there is a level of backup already built in that you can take advantage of. And also remember that backup, especially these days, backup is your best protection against ransomware. If they come in and clobber your major files, having a recent backup is your best protection against having to pay that onerous fine, that onerous ransom. It can stymie them. Be aware that some of the more sophisticated phishers now jump across your network to your backups, and they invade your backups as well. So at some given point, at least one copy has to be air-gapped, stored somewhere other than on the network. Can't be accessed from the network. That is your ultimate protection because then the invaders can't get there. It'll be harder for you to get there, but you know how to. No matter what you do when it comes to security for your files, remember, you have your own responsibility, your own fiduciary responsibility. It's your job that's on the line if anybody corrupts or steals your files. Your best bet, your best protection is to make sure that all files are encrypted at all times, whether they're at rest in storage or in transit across the network, always encrypted, and do not share the keys with your cloud provider. They don't need them. They're not interested in the payload. I strongly encourage you to make use of analytics. Our good friend Dr. Peter Drucker reminds us that you can't manage what you don't measure. Well, fortunately, Teams gives you great analytics. There's cross-team analytics you can use to get a big picture of what's being done across your entire network at any given time. You can analyze who's doing what, with whom, who's using what resources may no longer be necessary because they're really just not being used, all kinds of things. There's also per team analytics, so you can look at individual teams to analyze their activities. And there are per channel analytics. So each channel that you've established underneath each team has its own analytics. You can see what the subgroups are doing. This is very granular. And, for those of you who are deep believers in using the data to drive efficiency and drive more effectiveness, Teams enables you to the hilt. So take full advantage of analytics inside of Teams. Now, I mentioned encryption before and the importance of taking your responsibilities in security. Within Teams, entities have 3 levels of security. Entities may have baseline security. They may have sensitive security. They may have highly sensitive security, so that you can tier the sensitivity and the investments you make and the severity that you use in securing these different levels. Again, good news, Microsoft 365 enterprise-grade security is protecting everything at all times. Also, the compliance capability, the certifications you need to know that you'll pass your next compliance audit if indeed you are subject to regulatory audits. Microsoft enables that. Microsoft facilitates that very, very nicely. And it's all managed by Azure Active Directory, which for some of you, it's important to note, is completely consistent with Windows Server Active Directory, creating a single seamless environment if you're still in a hybrid that contains on-prem elements. Which brings us to governance, and I do want to talk in a little more depth about governance. It's important to determine who can create teams. Why? If you don't, you're going to find yourself saddled with a glut of teams. Not everybody will adhere to that idea about starting with why. So make a determination early on as to who has the level of control that can create new teams. When you create a team, determine immediately who owns it and who is a member in it. Don't leave it open to anybody who wants to join unless it's the water cooler. Some teams will have public access capability. Others will be extremely private with much more severe limitations. Important to establish those rules up front and to establish which teams are set to which groups of settings. This is much like groups in AD. You have to determine for each one what you want to give them access to and what you don't want them to have access to. Each team has its own settings for various things. Make sure that you go through those settings and actively decide. Don't just use the defaults. Your best practice is to always actively decide what the settings are going to be. What are your defaults? What do you want the settings to be? And then for each individual team, you may make different decisions. Create and communicate that consistent naming scheme. Okay? It's so important that somebody be able to just look at the name of a team or the name of a channel and know exactly where it fits into your hierarchy. You can do that by establishing and communicating to everybody what the naming conventions are. This is worth the investment of time. It pays dividends later as people don't have to go hunting for things. Determine what your level and limits are for guest access. You're going to have outsiders join your teams. You're going to have outsiders communicating with your people. This is a network, and it can be federated to other networks. Users can be invited in as guests to participate in projects. You need to determine early and keep governance over what guests are and aren't entitled to. As we mentioned earlier, there are many, many, many third-party apps you can add and integrate with Teams. For each one of them, you want to determine which users, in which channels, in which teams have access to individual third-party apps. There are apps you're not going to want everybody to be able to use. There are apps you are going to want everybody to use. Actively make those decisions and set them in Teams. One of the things that Teams is very good at is workflow. And when tasks are being flowed through an organization, you have exquisite control over the approvals process. Take advantage of it. Make sure that anything that really needs approval doesn't move forward until it gets approval. And if there's multiple approval points, you can facilitate that as well. Take advantage of this. Don't let things just fly willy-nilly through your network. Use the approval capabilities within Teams. Content. You're going to be curating a lot of content here. You've got SharePoint files and SharePoint lists available to you. You've got tremendous control available to you. Take advantage of that control and only assign access where it's needed rather than to everybody. Content is king. And the more time and effort you invest in protecting your content, the happier you're going to be later, because you're not going to suddenly find yourself in a compromised, disastrous position. I answered that question. Know exactly what happens. Explore what happens when you delete any particular kind of content. Know what's still possible. Know what stays in an archive bucket, how long it stays there. Be aware of that, because there may be some files you want instantly incinerated and other files you want retained for a period of time. You have the ability to control that. And hopefully, as we're going through this, you see there's just so much you can do inside of Teams. I'm encouraging you to use as much of it as you can. Obviously, governance over data security, who has access to keys, who has access, well, not the passwords anymore, but who has access to all the various different security capabilities that you're establishing within Teams. Also advise that you set up tagging. Tagging is, again, just like groups. You can, if you want to be able to reach the entire finance department, assign everybody in finance to tag everybody in finance with the finance tag. Then instead of having to tag them all individually, you simply tag at finance, and you can reach all of them in one shot. Configure your lifecycle management policies. You get to determine how long things live in your Teams environment, when files go away. Most public functionality is governed by the idea that you can set a policy, but you must obey your own policy. Here is where you set your policy. It's also where you can help enforce that policy you set and make sure that if you say a file is going to be destroyed 6 months after it's created, it gets destroyed at that 6-month mark. There's a lot of custom calling capability within Teams. You may not want everybody to take advantage of it. There may be people who don't do international calling. There may be people you don't want calling out of their own location. You have the ability to control that with great granularity. Same with meetings. You can set very specific policies for meetings, what can be done in a meeting. You may not want people to use simultaneous editing. I have no idea why you want that. You may not want people to have multi-departmental conferences. Again, I don't know why you'd limit that, but each organization is different. And so you have the ability to control the policies and many settings that govern how meetings happen within Teams. There are lots of other admin level team settings. Don't just use default. If there's any one best practice for everything, don't just use default. Actively look at every setting and make active decisions about every setting so you're sure that your environment is construed exactly the way you want it. And define your team's group policies. There's a lot of power in there that's there to help you enforce your policies. Use this to enforce those policies, but have policies to enforce. And because there's so much here, tons and tons of it, there's plenty of automation available to help you with governance of your team's environment. Take advantage of that governance. Okay, take advantage of that automation. So very quickly, we finally reached the point where we summarize our best practices, and we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I'll rush through this. As we said at the beginning, justify every team and every channel. Make sure you understand why and document why you're creating each team, each channel. Excessively use shared channels and planners. Keep everybody on the same page about when things have to happen. Deadlines are real. Make sure everybody knows when they are. Everyone must get religion. For teams to be an effective environment, everybody has to do what they're supposed to do. We talk about calendar religion. If it's not on my calendar, I don't know that it's going to happen. Make sure that everybody adheres to that everybody understands the one single source of truth is found within teams. And so you've got to get religion about teams. Consistency. I've mentioned it over and over again in naming conventions, in how you create and remove teams, your different security policies and management policies. It needs to be consistency. There needs to be governance over your governance to make sure that you're always consistent, because when something's consistent, it's infinitely easier to enforce. Avoid as much as you can redundancy or overlap. People should always know exactly where to go for any particular thing that they need. And finally, 3 words that live with me every day. Integrate, make everything work together. Automate, make as much of it work alone as possible so you're free to do the things that require your intellect, your talent, and your capabilities. And at all times, innovate, innovate, innovate. You have a tremendous ability to innovate inside of teams. Use your imagination and have a great time with it. It's an amazing environment. Long awaited, took a long time to develop. It's here. Let's use it. And with that, David, got any questions for me?
We certainly do, Howard. We have a big and active audience, and we have a few minutes for questions. So let's get right to it. A couple of audience members asked a question about basically the same thing, which I'm guessing guest access might be the answer to. Here's one of the questions. My partner has established a team site that holds files of interest to us both. How do I access her team site and its files?
They can give you access. The guest access capabilities inside of Teams, it makes it easy for you to determine that any particular guest or all guests have access. They can create a repository for files that are of interest to both of you.
Okay, great. Here's a couple of is there a way questions. A lot of people are taking advantage of this to learn more about how to use Teams. The first, is there a way? Is there a way to start a team without an email address or have it not displayed in the GAL? Staff errantly choose infrequently checked addresses and messages to not get noticed.
So I think you're asking me, is there a way to prevent people from doing that? Wow. To avoid it showing up in the GAL. I honestly don't know. I can't imagine that there is. It doesn't seem like something that Microsoft would enable. mainly because of the reason they created all those structures. But David, if you can get that person's email address, I'll be glad to check it, find out, and get back to them.
You bet.
Well, no, let me make that easier. My email address is hmc@hmcrightnow.com. You got to spell right. It's WRITE, so it's hmcwritenow.com, and I'll be glad to check that out for you.
Okay, great. The other is there a way question is there a way to turn off the calendar creation for every team?
I would imagine that there is. It's an automatic function, but I would almost be willing to bet that there is a switch in the general policy settings that would defeat that. Again, you've got my email address. Drop me a line. I'll be glad to. It's quick to check.
Okay, now we've all got your email address. We're going to have some fun now. Okay, that's all the questions we have time for. Thanks again, Howard, for a great presentation.
Thank you, David. Thank you all.